Good morning, students. Good morning to all. And last day we have studied about the ASEAN's achievements and the functions of the ASEAN nations. Today we will just study about the BRICS. So BRICS. So BRICS is the acronym for an association of five major emerging national economies. So the first letter, the Brazil, B for the B from the Brazils and R from Russia and India, China and South Africa. So the emerging national economies, the association of five major emerging national economies only is considered as a BRICS. So originally the first four were grouped as BRIC before the induction of South Africa in 2010. In 2010, at last the South Africa was joined in the BRICS organizations. So after that only the name as take as a BRICS. So the term BRIC was coined in 2001. The BRICS members are known for their significant influence on regional affairs. Since 2009, the BRICS nations have met annually at formal summits. The South Africa hosted the 10th BRICS summit in July 2018. Its headquarters is at Shanghai. So the headquarters of BRICS are situated in Shanghai, in China. The new development bank, formerly referred to as the BRICS Development Bank. So the BRICS Development Bank was established by the BRICS states. The first BRICS summit was held at Moscow and South Africa hosted the 10th conference at Johannesburg in July 2018. These BRICS nations has some of the objectives. So what are the objectives are there mean? First, the BRICS always helpful to increasing the trade cooperations by making an exclusive trade bloc. The BRICS organizations are made the exclusive trade blocs. By using the trade blocs, it will be increasing the trade cooperations among the nations, member nations. Next, to use currency other than US dollars. So for the international trade, so many of the nations must be using the US dollars only. But after the BRICS organizations, it is helpful to use the currency other than the US dollars. Since dollar is a dominant currency and as can control the flow of dollar, BRICS only helps in the countries operating with alternative currencies. By providing the alternative currencies, their trade was increased for all the nations throughout the world. How far have they succeeded in this respect? Not much. Next, to increase the regional cooperations, the BRICS organizations also helpful to increasing the regional cooperations. Next, to create a separate trade bloc made for developing countries for trade cooperations. For the trade cooperations, the BRICS was increasing the separate trade blocks and create and increasing the separate trade blocks for the trade cooperations. Next, functions of BRICS. What are the functions are undertaken by the BRICS? So BRICS acts as a promoter of more legitimate international system and also advocating reform of the United Nations Security Councils. It also created the United Nations Security Councils. Next, this group of nations is especially meant for South Framework for Cooperations. South framework for the cooperation. Next, the BRICS performs as an agent to bridge the increasing gap between developed and developing countries. So it also created one of the relationship among the developed and developing countries. So what are the helpful is needed for the develop and the developing nations? It will be giving. So for instance, in the World Trade Organizations, the BRICS countries are emphasizing to promote a fair order regarding agricultural policies. So some of the important and the special agricultural policies was taken by the BRICS organizations only. Next, it performs a commendable contributions for assisting the developing countries in gaining in an area such as the advantage in trade and climate changes negotiations. Next, it disseminates informations and exchange platform beyond the economic cooperations. Next, the BRICS acts as a catalytic in protecting the interests of middle powers and global forums. Next, achievement of BRICS. So, what are the achievements are achieved by the BRICS? The BRICS establishment of the contingent reserve arrangement. So, one of the organization, the establishment of contingent reserve arrangement, the CRE. So, it was arranged established by the BRICS. So, it has further deepened and consolidated the partnership of its members in the economic financial areas. Next, in the 6th BRICS summit in Brazil, the member of countries signed an agreement to create a development bank, the new development bank. So the new development bank also was established in Shanghai, the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank. Next, the economic potential and demographic development are putting the BRICS countries increasingly in a leading position in setting the global agenda and it having a greater say in the global governance. Okay, student. Then the chapter 8 has completed. Then next we will go to the chapter 9 fiscal economies. The term fiscal economies is the new one. The old popular term of the subject is the public finance. Now only the fiscal economy is the public economies is considered as a fiscal economies. The term only is changed. So the older term for the fiscal economy is public finance. The subject public finance is related to the financing of the state activities and it discusses the financial operations of the government treasuries. So the term fiscal is derived from Greek word which means basket and symbolizes the public purses. Hence the subject public finance has been newly termed as a fiscal economics. The fiscal economy is dealing with the all income and the expenditures of the government. So the public finance studies the manner in which the state raises and spends the resources. So how one governments are going to make the income and spend the expenditures for the public welfare. So the state is concerned with the collective wants of the citizens. The modern state is a welfare state. The modern state is a welfare state. The activities of the state have increased extensively and intensively. To perform these activities, the state needs funds. This chapter deals with the public revenue public expenditures, public debt, budget, and the local finance. So all the welfare government must providing the infrastructure facilities and some of the welfare things to the peoples. So public finance is a study of the financial aspect of government. It is concerned with the revenue and the expenditure of the public authorities and with adjustment of the one to the others. If the government has the possibilities to earning the more income from one department and in the same time it will be unable to earning the more income from the another one of the department. So some of the adjustment will be undertaking among these all the sectors or in the all the departments. So public finance is one of those subjects that lie on the border line between economics and politics because the improvement of economics must be depending upon the politics. If the good politics or the good politicians are being in any of the nations, that nations will be improved at easy. So it is concerned with the income and the expenditure of public authorities and with the adjustment of one with another. Next, the subject matter of public finance. The subject matter are the scope of public finance. So in modern times, the subject public finance includes five major subdivisions that and all the public revenue, public expenditures, public debt, and the financial administrations and fiscal policies. The public revenue deals with the methods of raising public revenue, such as tax and non-tax, the principles of taxation, rate of taxation. So the part public revenue deals with the methods of raising public revenue. Whatever methods are there and what are the ways are there to earning the more income to the government. So it will be impact incidents and shifting taxes and their effects. So in this public revenue we will going to study the ways and the sources to earning the revenue for the government. Next, public expenditures. This part will study the fundamental principles that govern the government expenditures, aspect of public expenditures and control of public expenditures. So how to control the public expenditures and how to make the public expenditure as a effectful for the government. So all the expenditure for the government will be studied by the public expenditures. Next, public debt. The public debt deals with the methods of raising loans from internal and external sources. So internally and externally the public will create the debt. So the burden and the effects and redemption of public debt fall under this head. So the government also have to be borrow the money from any of the internal and external organizations. So this part will be going to study about the debt of government. Next, financial administrations. So this part deals with the study of the different aspect of public budget. The budget is the annual master financial plan of the government. So the various objectives and steps in preparing a public budget, passing or sanctioning, allocation, evaluation and auditing fall within the financial administrations. So how the world, how the nations are going to prepare the budget and how the budgets are going to passing and sanctioning and how much of the resources have to be allocated for the separate industries and separate sectors. The last one is fiscal policies. The fiscal policies deals with the taxes, subsidies and public debt and public expenditures are the instrument of fiscal policies. So some of the policies is taken by the government to improving our financial boundaries. The five scope of and the subject matters are there. First, public revenue and the public expenditures and the public debt and the financial administration and the fiscal policies. Next, the public finance and the private finance. What are the relations and what are the variations are there between the public finance and the private finance? The public finance deals with the study of income, expenditures, borrowing, and financial administrations of the government, right? So, private finance is the study of income, expenditures, borrowing, and financial administrations of the individual or the private companies. But both public and private finance are fundamentally similar in nature, but different from each other on various operational aspects. So the similarities and dissimilarities between public and private finance have been explained. First, the similarities. What are the similarities are there between the public finance and the private finance means? On the four heading we can explain it. First one, the rationality. So both public finance and private finance are based on the rationality. So maximization of welfare and least cost factor combinations underlie both. So even the government and the private organizations also will be thinking as rational. So it is the both of the organizations also will be taking the more effort to minimizing the cost and providing the maximization of welfare. Next, limit to borrowing. So both financial organizations also have to apply the restraint with regard to the borrowing. The government also cannot live beyond its means. So there is a limit to deficit financing by the state also. So both the private and the public finance also have been in the need of borrowing the money. So but even though it has some of the limits. Next, resource utilizations. So both the private and public sectors have limited resources at their disposal. So both attempt to make optimum use of resources. So both organizations also have to use their resources as a optimum ways. Next, administrations. So the effectiveness of measures of the government as well as private depends on the administrative machineries. So if the administrative machineries is inefficient and corrupt, it will result in wastages and losses. So both the private and the public also have to be as a honorable administrations and the effective administrations. If it is ineffective or it is corrupt, it will be wastages and losses. Next, dissimilarities. So what are the dissimilarities are there between the private and public finance? First, under the five heads we can explain the dissimilarities. First one is income and expenditures adjustment. So the government adjusts the income to the expenditures while individuals adjust their expenditure to the income. So private finance involves stitching coat according to cloth available, whereas public finance decides the cloth according to the needs for the coat. So the government always will be spend some amount of the money for their needed only. So it will not be wastage the income and it will not be spending more amount for their purpose. Next, borrowing. The government can borrow from the internal and external sources. It can borrow from the people by issuing bonds. However, an individual cannot borrow from himself. The government has more power to borrowing from the internal and external affairs. So even the government can have the power to borrowing the money from the international organizations like World Bank and the IBRD. Next, right to print currencies. The government can print currency. This involves the creations, distributions, and monitoring of currencies. The private sector cannot create the currencies. Even if the private organizations have to be depending upon the government only. Next, present versus future decisions. So the public finance is more involved with future planning and making long-term decisions. These investments clouds include building of schools, hospitals, and infrastructures. So the private finance makes financial decisions on projects with a short-term vision only. So the public finance also always more involved in the future planning only. So they will taking the long-term decisions. Next, objectives. The public sector's main objective is to provide social benefit in the economy. The private sector aims to maximize the personal benefit, that is the profit. Okay, students, I think it's enough. So, just to take the similarities and dissimilarities of private and public finance as your study portions. And if you have any doubt, please ask me.